always trying to figure out how to fit in, how to get along, how to, go with it. Or if we see something wrong, how are we going to confront that? How are we going to take on this challenge? I got anxiety about that, And so mushrooms kind of give us a chance sometimes for our brain to just not to think about it differently. Because sometimes what it is that anxiety is based on a perception of our individual, of expectations of me, which expectations lead to resentment, and then resentments for ourselves and others leads to more suffering. I was a mushroom hunter. I went out and found mushrooms. Nobody I remember actually telling me. I experimented them with as a teenager and did mushrooms for fun. And I had a great experience with it. The first time I saw the movie Legend with Tom Cruise. He was like 17 years old. It was brand new. We went and saw it at the drive-in. And we came home tripping mushrooms, and it was like, things were looking like demons, like the devil of the thing. It was kind of cool, and it just kind of made you think outside the box and see that there's things in the world you can't perceive with your five senses. And so mushrooms allow you to see that other. So then I started studied about them, that they probably are the origin of all religions, like all ancient humans who experimented with mushrooms, and as a result, we're able to, have some revelations about reality and created, ideologies around it. In fact, I understand the word shaman, which I don't like that word. If anybody ever told me, are you a shaman? I'm like, no, I'm not a shaman. Even though they think I do, ceremonies and rituals, those things are not, to me, shamanistic at all. And the word shaman comes from Russian. The word saman was mushroom users. They were people in the Siberian, they were reindeer herders, and so they were the shaman. They would heal people, and so I've read a lot of stuff about some of their rituals, things like that. So to me, it's almost like I don't like the word God anymore, and but I think of divinity, and when I think of mushrooms, I think of them as a divine medicine, a power plant. It's a plant. There is also peyote. There's marijuana is even a plant that has, an effect. It gives us a capacity to kind of change our state of being, our feelings and things like that. So I think of mushrooms as a power plant, a medicine plant, and as a tool that the earth provides us to help us have a better relationship with the earth, because that's really what I think. A lot of our struggle as a human race, all collectively, is having a balanced relationship with each other, with the earth, with ourselves, even us as humans. We have to have a relationship with ourselves. In my use of them too is I've been using a lot the last year, microdosing sometimes, not on a very long continual basis, but when there's some things going on that are really stressful. Then I have a friend that packages my psilocybin along with lion's mane mushroom. And lion's mane is also an edible mushroom sold in the supermarkets that helps good with neurological function. It helps our bodies, helps our brain. So he mixes those two mushrooms, which they're microdose, so you don't really have an effect of it. But it's still, the medicine still goes in, and it keeps me from being really stressed out. So I enjoy that, or I utilize it, not for the sense that I get an euphoric thing. So I don't really, and then to do a journey, I haven't done that in quite a few years. Probably the last time I actually said to myself, I'm gonna take a whole bunch of mushrooms and I'm gonna, meditate and be alone with them. It's 15 years. Microdosing, for those who have not heard about it much, although it's starting to get pretty popular, is taking small amounts. I've never measured them myself, but I know that a couple grams of mushrooms are going to make you socially uncomfortable. That's a good way to put it. You're just kind of like socially uncomfortable. You can't really, unless you're experienced and used to doing them all the time, and then people, sometimes you don't even know somebody's taking mushrooms. They're just behaving, acceptable. And a microdose is a very small amount that you can grind it, put it in a capsule. I've also just sometimes had a bag of mushrooms, of fresh mushroom fruits. The fruit body is, we call them fruits, and then just break off a small piece and eat it. You don't really have. I've never had an experience with a physician or a doctor or a scientist or somebody who's gonna like dose out a certain amount, and so it's just kind of using it, just knowing that if I take too much, and there's sometimes when you do, where you take a little extra and you're like, okay, I feel kind of nice, I feel happy, and I feel mellow, and I'm in a nice, better mood. It's similar to taking a few hits from the bong, So that in its way, in a way, has also been a usage for a lot of people with the mushrooms. People have anxiety in this world because of our overemphasis on individualism. We have this because of maybe religion, but not necessarily only religion, but particularly in materialism and the idea that, keeping up with the Joneses, capitalist ideas of competition, of people who's the best looking, who's beauty pageants, things like this that are socially like norms, and the way that we use mirrors everywhere. Everybody's got mirrors in their house. You got a mirror in the bathroom. So you're constantly looking at yourself. You're constantly evaluating yourself, constantly judging yourself, and you have a lot of anxiety because you don't know if you're good enough for others, or you are afraid of what others might say when you want to speak out in front of people. So we have anxiety, and we're always trying to figure out how to fit in, how to get along, how to, go with it. Or if we see something wrong, we're like, how are we going to confront that? How are we going to take on this challenge? I got anxiety about that, And so mushrooms kind of like give us a chance sometimes for our brain to just not to think about it differently, because sometimes what it is that anxiety is based on a perception of our individual, of expectations of me, which expectations lead to resentment, and then resentments for ourselves and others leads to more suffering. We have in the Aztec culture, there's a symbol called Xochipilli, and there's a very well-known documented image of a person sitting in meditation. They're kind of raised their eyes, and on their body are the images of the medicines, the peyote, the tobacco, the sage medicines, the mushrooms, and ololiuki is another one. That there's a flower, the datura, that they grow them around here. I've experimented with that plant as well, and it's like there's different plants. San Pedro is another cactus. So he's in there and he's kind of like meditating, and the plants are on his body. So it's obvious that our ancestors did utilize these medicines, but the actual ceremonies, the rituals for them, these we don't have a lot of firsthand, because our culture values the lessons by experience and by handing down oral tradition and teaching somebody physically, not just putting it in a book and then giving it to you as a prescription, and then you read it, and then you have to try to like follow the instructions and do the ceremony. So they never, and maybe they did document them in some ways in the past, but a lot of our books have been burned, and a lot of our knowledge was kind of smothered. And I've heard some pretty cool stuff, like using mushrooms really when a group of men would go out to maybe hunt a deer. They would get together, they would eat some mushrooms, and then they would kind of like make their plans for how the hunt was going to go. And they would all take the mushrooms together, because then they would all be in, because they're going to coordinate, work together, It's not like you just go trample through the woods with a shotgun back in the day, because that's, when we took a life of an animal, our ancestors, there was a ritual to it, there was a process, and it's difficult because the animals, they're pretty smart, they don't want to just stay out there and die, So you got to track them, you got to find them. They call the deer the ghost of the forest, sometimes. And when it's hunting season, if you're an avid hunter, it's kind of hard to find them sometimes. They're not just out there waiting to get shot, As far as like, I personally, now I won't say I throw caution into the wind, but I think my use of mushrooms in the past and other rituals and other medicines and other experiences, I have given up the idea of controlling my life and controlling my world and so I don't believe that I can always be safe about everything that happens to me. And I welcome challenges. I certainly don't take mushrooms when I know I got to go drive somewhere, right? Of course. So basic common practices, of course, are always something you want to consider. With microdosing, I usually don't worry about, because I know it's going to be such a small amount that I'm not going to be under influence where I'm affected with driving, going to work, doing things that I have to do on a daily basis. But certainly if there was, and when there has been like interaction with other people that have wanted to try it, they haven't done it before, I would tell her, well, let's come down, we'll get some. I can help you find it, buy it. Let's make sure you do a little bit. We can do it together. We can do it with another group. Do you have something that you want to focus on? Because people can really try to get their intention into what they do. And I'm all for that. I believe that when we do things just frivolously, that we have way less control over the result. So when we put intention, then, but I'm not going to say that always things are going to work out. That every time I set up and want to make a beautiful experience and it's going to be nice and peaceful, that it just comes out that way. Sometimes things happen where, hey man, that's not going out the way it was. Somebody felt like they were kind of freaked out, and you just take care of it, deal with it when you can, try to calm people down. My son one time, he found some mushrooms that I had, and he had taken them once before, because we actually do sometimes in the evening ceremonies, we do all night long. And so my kids, they're like, it's hard to stay up, Dad. So I gave them a small amount of mushrooms in the past. So they felt really good, and they were like, oh, cool. And it made them more, like, hey, when's the next ceremony? They want to do it. But he found I had some really good, stronger ones, because there's different kinds of mushrooms. And the ones they call penis envy are very potent. And I had a whole bag of those, and he took one about the size of your finger, just the stem, and he came up, he's like sneaking about it, and he came up to the house, or came up to the front room, me and my wife were watching TV, and he goes, oh, I'm sorry, Dad, I'm sorry, I took some of the mushrooms. He goes up freaking out. We were like, it's all right, sit down, I tried to put on Pink Floyd The Wall and make him watch that movie. And he was like, no, I can't see this, I don't want to watch, because there was like a war scene. He's like, I don't want to watch that. So me and his mom just, we talked to him. We were like, it's okay, son, don't freak out. You're going to be okay. And he felt safe right away again. I would recommend a person starting out using mushrooms the first time to have somebody watch them, make sure that they're right, somebody that's not taking the mushroom, so that way that they can. But it really, and like with another gentleman that we tried to set up kind of like we were going to have almost a treatment center where there would be a place where people that would work to watch a person while they were on the shrooms. The idea was not to interact with them, because a person who's having their experience while the mushroom is in their system, they're very subjective to any external stimulus. A lot of times that's what causes people to have bad trips. They're out at a club and all these lights are going on, and so they start freaking out, and so the person who's observing and watching, that person should minimally if ever have any interaction, because the person that is having the experience, they'll definitely be their experience will be altered or different, and sometimes having the experience to just laying in a bed taking mushrooms is a little, more like institutionalized. I'd much rather see people just sit at the park or go out into the woods, and then just give yourself time, because if you're gonna ingest 2 grams of mushrooms, you probably need at least a couple hours before you're able to come down and get grounded. 3 hours, I would say, too. If you have a larger amount like that. I would say if you wanted to really expand your experience, And if like, because when people have asked me, I'm like, what do you mean by that? Do you want to have a vision? Do you want to like see things like hallucination? Or do you want to have this revelation, like a feeling inside of you? Or do you want to realize something like you never thought about? Because, you know, that would, to me, it would influence what kind of sounds you're going to hear. You know, if you're going to listen to classical music, you're more in your mind. You're more about thinking something that you never, looking at it in a way you've never looked at it before. But if it's emotional, I go with drum beats, heartbeat, because it's in our heart. We're down in our gut, you know what I mean? That's where we feel. And so I use a lot of like, I listen to native drumming. Peyote drumming is really soft, has a water drum. That's a really pretty, you know, sound to it. There's, you know, I have a cousin who's a punk rocker. And he likes punk rock, you know, and that helps him out, you know what I mean, when he's listening to it. So it's definitely going to be a person's own, you know, but you know, and like if you're thinking about these childhood traumas, well, what kind of music did you grow up listening to? Sometimes that, you know, I don't listen to country anymore, but when I put on a country song, I start remembering my dad, and so then when I, you know, have to use the mushroom for that, then I know that that's a good way to enhance or to, you know, stimulate the thing that I'm going to go through in my head. With for visualizing or out of body almost experience, there's these binary beats. You can get them on YouTube. You can just listen to them on a YouTube channel, and they play, and they actually sound a little like the water drum, but different sound frequencies are able to also kind of get our bodies, our mind body balance, and mind body and spirit balance kind of altered. And so, you know, if you're looking to do that, I'd say some binary beats and a big heavy dose, you know, 4 grams, watch out, you know. I've heard 7 is like the most I've heard anybody want. And then people that have gone over 7, they're like, it's the same as 7, so don't waste your money. Oh man, thank you for coming down and, you know, just giving us the medicine. Thanks, you know. It's like, I know that I probably couldn't have the same communication that you do with the trees through the mycelium, you know, but it's really good to know that we're all connected, you know, that you've helped us to realize the relationship. And that's what I think all of our ancestral people who utilize mushrooms quite often in all cultures all over the world, is they had a good relationship with each other, with their environment, and with their fellow man because of that. You know, it seemed like the ones when as societies became civilized and small groups of people decided that they were going to control the rest of the people, one of the things they did was prohibit them from indulging in mushrooms. You know, they give them alcohol because that's a good one, you know, to tear you up with. But it's good to have the mushroom, you know, and to see that you're still here, that, you know, that nobody's going to be able to eradicate you, you know, and that I believe that we have a good journey ahead of us. So, yeah, I look forward to the blossoming, you know, the fruit of the mushroom is kind of like its flower, you know, and so it can really blossom within humanity as well. And so, you know, talking to Mr. Mushroom or Mrs. Mushroom, you know, I always thought of the mushroom more as the male end of the planet, and the corn as the female, you know, but everything has that duality, and that's part of what I think mushrooms have also helped us see, you know, is that because mushroom is based on decay, you know, they grows in our shit, it grows on dead trees, they grow in that recycling, that moment of transformation. And so we as humans, we're always looking for, we're constantly changing, but too often we're obsessed with trying to keep things the way they are. You know, we want, especially once we find a bliss, you want to keep that going all the time. You want everything to be a man of leisure was, I remember it was a long time ago, was the goal, you know, as the Industrial Revolution got its start. The idea was being a person of leisure, which unfortunately meant having everyone else do all the labor so that you could sit around and do nothing, you know. And I think we all need work to do. And the mushroom is that transformation of that recycling of coming back, and we all have to deal with our shit, you know. So we all have to process. We have to realize we're all constantly changing, and that we're constantly connected, interconnected with everything around us. So there's not good and bad. There's not what's right and wrong. There's what stage is it in, you know. If you think of just the simple nature of, we see the sunrise in the morning. The sunrise is a new day, and then it's a full day, and the sun is high up above, and we're in the glory of the beautiful day. Or even if it rains, you know, you have a big rainstorm, rain fills the earth with water, and then as the sun sets, the darkness starts to come. We start to relax. We release the energy that we had of the day, and then we go to a state of repose, and we rest and we sleep, and then our body is still processing. You know, that's why time is moving through us. We're not moving through time, time's moving through us. And then as we rest, we reset, that next day comes back up, and then that thing goes along. So where are you in your process in life? And many processes we constantly go through, you know. And so that mushroom is that important part of that slumber, that sleep, but it's ready to give life to the new things, because it's breaking down the old organic matter. You know, it's probably, I certainly believe that mushrooms are going to be what helps clean up the environmental disasters, the oil spills in the oceans, the plastics, the myceliums, and the science that can be done with them is going to help us to clean up environmentally a lot of the mistakes that our ancestors have done, or that are recent, you know, our fathers and grandfathers and stuff. So our children will be able to have a good world thanks to you, Mr. Mushroom, and all of the wonderful webs of network that you spread out into the fabric of life in this earth, planet Earth. Thank you, this Mother Earth.